I have received many a comment informing me on Godzilla's versatility, and I have endured 1,000 lectures informing me that Godzilla can be anything the writers want, that Godzilla is but a mere vessel for the writers to implant their ideas and themes into a story of their own choosing and design. I have also argued, after some convincing, that the tone of Godzilla movies can be anything. Tone is not a determining factor when assessing a film's quality. The fun tone doesn't make the Showa movies bad any more than the tone of the Haze era movies make them good. That being said, I do think there is some truth to the sentiment that tone affects aspects of a story and their characters. The execution, however, is what matters more than anything. Let's look at a character like Batman, for example. From his inception, Batman was a noir-like detective that wielded a gun. But over time he became more goofy, something the Adam West Batman adapts in all of his 60s camp glory. And during this time, as well as in future installments, his no-kill rule was embedded into his character, and because of his origin and how well it fits into the narrative, the change stuck, and has been pushed to its limits in several iterations for decades. Even with adaptations such as the Adam West Batman or Brave and the Bold, or even my personal favorite, the Lego Batman movie, or even my other personal favorite, Batman Ninja, there is still an element of goofiness in the character and his surroundings and interactions, which juxtapose well with his serious, brooding self. You want to know why? Because the core of who the character is as well as his values have been kept consistent throughout his entire tenure. But who is Batman? Batman is a billionaire playboy genius trained in every martial art under the sun, who delivers justice to the crime-ridden streets of Gotham City using his intellect, his physical prowess, and resources to make the place he calls home a better place, in the name of his parents, who were taken from him in a hit and run, a crime he vows to stand against, and crimes like it, to the cost of his own life. This core idea has been omnipresent in almost every single adaptation, even when the story tweaks things like in Batman v Superman or The Dark Knight Returns. In The Dark Knight Returns, it's framed as Batman becoming a hypocrite and being too old to deal with people like the Joker. In Batman v Superman, Batman kills because he thinks his non-lethal methods are no longer effective, and this ineffectiveness took Robin from him. Of course, the comic is better of the two, but it's not because Batman kills or not, it's because the plot of one is well written while the other one was made by Zack Snyder. In almost every story where Batman kills, it's never brushed off as something Batman does casually. Something or someone, be it a character, the story, or the themes, brings attention to the fact that Batman is killing people, something he has vowed against. But that exploration of his character and how far one can take that idea of Batman is what makes him a versatile character. His meaning is not diluted because of it, because we still understand who or what Batman is, and also because Batman sticks to who he is more often than he doesn't. Superman, unlike Batman, didn't go through that many changes in characterization, however. He's still the same Superman we all know and love. He's an alien that escaped from his doomed homeworld and was raised by humans. Superman may be a god amongst men, but he is still more human than most. That's his character. He is human in all the ways that matter. He is the embodiment of the indomitable human spirit, and the irony of it all is that he's an alien. How Superman turned out is a testament to the power of humanity, and because of being characterized the same way consistently, this allows people to experiment. The very idea of an evil Superman trope could only exist if Superman was consistently portrayed in different mediums, but even stories like Injustice use Superman's morality as a base for his change. It's not completely gone, it's just mixed with other things that fit, like his obsessive need to make sure that no people die thanks to criminals. His character in the story is everything Superman is taken to an unhealthy and dangerous extreme, which is why the story uses a Superman from a different universe in which he doesn't become a tyrant to remind him of what he once stood for. Injustice Superman is what happens when you go too far in one direction. Too much of a good thing can become a bad thing. Also, I've been noticing a renaissance in people's appreciation for Superman, and I'm so happy that the disdain for him is dead. He didn't deserve the hate he got. Spider-Man is almost exactly like Superman, save for the fact that he's an alien. But the thing with Spider-Man is that he is akin to Job from the Bible. He is 9 out of 10 times miserable, with the universe constantly kicking him in the nuts and leaving him to wail in pain. But despite all of this, he gets back up and sacrifices his body, mind, and spirit to protect the innocent. When he doesn't, his conscience won't even let him sleep. This has been consistent almost all the time, almost to an abusive degree. Looking at you, Zeb Wells. This is also why Daredevil and Spider-Man have such a great friendship. Daredevil's life is Spider-Man's but worse, because Daredevil doesn't have the kind of powers that would let Spider-Man survive what it is he does. But they both have the same mindset. Unlike Spider-Man, however, Daredevil stories have been consistently good, with the Netflix series being the best incarnation of possibly any Marvel character in recent history. I could go on and on, but notice how I mentioned the big three. Their stories, their character, the themes, and what they all mean to people have been consistent for decades. But this isn't just true for those three. The majority of people's favorite characters have had little changes to who they are fundamentally. Hulk, Magneto, Captain America, Wolverine, Doctor Doom, Black Adam, Robin, even relatively lesser known characters like Moon Knight have had very little fundamental changes. Also read the Jeff Lemire run, it's really good. And it doesn't just have to be superheroes. James Bond to an extent, Optimus Prime, and even King Kong also fall into this net. But notice how I'm using the word fundamental as in the foundation of the characters. Their essence, what makes them stand out from a crowd, what they represent in the meta, in the macrocosm of pop culture, what they mean to people on an individual level. Some can extract shards of meaning from what is already there in the character and analyze them in their own way, as any great piece of art allows. This is why so many people love these characters for different reasons. But what about Godzilla? What is Godzilla? Who is he? What does he stand for? Of course, we already know what he means. He's the embodiment of nuclear holocaust. But people have been saying that Godzilla can represent anything, that he's versatile. And if Godzilla can mean anything, if you can have him mean so many things, you end up with him lacking a concrete identity of his own. In Batman the Animated Series, Clayface had so many faces, so many masks of different people and personalities, that his own identity was completely drowned and diluted, because in his torturous stupor, he forgot where his characters ended and where he himself began. When you can mean so many things, you end up meaning nothing, and if you mean nothing, how can you be concretized in the macrocosm of pop culture? Why should anyone care? The very fact that Godzilla is never a fixed thing is a problem. If you want to explore specific aspects of Godzilla, that is all well and good. If you want to push the limits of what and who he is, all the better. The possibilities are endless. But how many Godzilla movies can you point and say the original message is still alive in it? Not many. With the Showa era, Godzilla went from representing a nuclear holocaust to the movie monster we all know to a superhero in the span of 4 movies. In the Haze era, the only time this is acknowledged is in Godzilla 1984, Godzilla vs. Biollante, and Godzilla vs. Destoroyah. Other than that, he was kind of supposed to be a somewhat tragic animal thanks to the input of this character, but I don't see any sane person sympathizing with this. In the Millennium series, the only time this was ever a concrete thing was in GMK. In the Monsterverse, it's not present at all. It's only in the Reiwa era in which this is somewhat present consistently, but even Singular Point doesn't have your nuclear-powered Godzilla. He's a higher dimensional super god here to bring the catastrophe, as the show calls it, essentially the end of the world. Of course, the show isn't bad because of this reason. The main issue is the overly complicated plot being dragged by the lifeless anorexic spaghetti arms of what the show calls characters. And in the Polygon trilogy, Godzilla is just the apex predator. It's just Mother Earth. It's even in the name, Godzilla Earth. There's not much to him. Of course, this doesn't make the film bad. Matter of fact, the plot is actually somewhat consistent, but the character writing is just abysmal, non-existent. And that severely hurts the show to the point where we have the reputation it has today. And I don't blame people for hating it. The question is, however, does Godzilla having a concrete identity affect the writing in any way? The answer is a complicated yesn't. Because, and this is a nuclear hot take, as iconic as the original 54 film was, the writing does not hold up to modern standards for storytelling, which are higher than they were 70 years ago. Aspects of the plot are rather contrived and the execution of certain plot points are a bit clunky. For example, Godzilla is supposedly awoken by nuclear tests, which is where his radioactive nature comes into play. The issue is, however, that the people of Odo Island already seem to understand his existence well enough to have an entire oral tradition around him, since he's been around for generations. He can't be a saurian mutated by nuclear radiation and a creature of ancient legend at the same time. It sounds dumb. Why can't he be? That's what he was in -1, right? Well, yes and no. All we knew at the beginning of -1 was that the residents of the island knew who Godzilla was and that he brought deep-sea fish whenever he rose from the sea. He's just a creature that exists, and then he got mutated by nuclear tests. The reason why it doesn't work in 54 is because the movie doesn't establish that Godzilla went under any mutation. He was just awoken by the bomb. His physical appearance is also confirmed by him showing up the next day on the very same island, meaning the creature that attacked the island was the same as the one we see for the rest of the movie. We can accept the idea of Godzilla that the original poses with no problem. We can accept what he represents. But on top of the fact that the movie can't really decide on what Godzilla is between a creature affected by the bomb or somebody or someone a legend that embodies the bomb, rarely do the films stick with what is commonly understood by fans and directors. Not to say that there aren't any films that do this, I'm making that abundantly clear. Off the top of my head, 1984, versus Biollante, versus Destroyer, GMK, Shin, and now recently, -1, all do this. Although Shin is more of a modern retelling, but the spirit is still there because radiation is still a big factor. In fact, -1 did it better because we could actually see the bomb physically affecting Godzilla, even for a brief moment. But there are more movies that don't do it than those that do. Granted, this doesn't necessarily affect the writing quality because 1984 and Versus Biollante are very contrived movies regardless, but keeping Godzilla's identity somewhat intact is a positive I suppose you can levy at the films. But all that is undermined by all the plot contrivances such as Godzilla never finishing the job with humanity or humans never taking the opportunity to kill Godzilla when they have the chance. In the Haze era, they don't treat Godzilla like what he is, a living nuke. They treat him like a natural disaster that just comes every couple of years to cause severe property damage. Nukes are not earthquakes. Godzilla is not a typhoon. So the very existing of the Heisei era is in itself both unfaithful and contrived. It's unfaithful because it doesn't treat Godzilla like a nuke, and neither do the characters, especially that one environmentalist that shall not be named. And it's contrived because there is absolutely no reason why anybody should stop trying to kill Godzilla. Looking at you, characters from Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla, and there is absolutely no reason why Godzilla should stop his rampage for any reason save for when he's hurt, but the times where he isn't at the end of the films outweigh the many times that he is, and in those times he could have finished destroying everything. Nothing stopped him, and there is nothing that should indicate that he is tired. He just leaves for no reason. So in essence, Godzilla's identity and the writing quality of the movie are somewhat intertwined because for the former to work, the latter must be executed well. That's the main takeaway. So what can writers learn from this? People in Hollywood, what can they take away from it? For starters, you can stop thinking with your wallets and start using your brains. That always helps. Or you could always just try recapturing the spirit of the original in a heartfelt oh wait, we already have that. Okay, so what now? What do we do next? Simple, we expand on the subject. I think people conflate tone with identity when it comes to characterizing Godzilla, because the subject matter behind Godzilla's character is serious, so they don't want him to mean what he is supposed to mean to make room for the fun. But this presupposes that serious movies can't be fun, which is a fallacious statement. John Wick was serious and fun, Lord of the Rings was serious and fun, Joker was serious and it's the most fun I've ever had. I mean, I don't see anybody saying Joker was boring. The Batman was serious and fun, so that can't be it. So what do people think fun means? Oh, I know, excitement. Fun to them is excitement. They're conflating the two concepts. That makes a lot more sense now because yes, the MonsterVerse films are exciting, but are they fun? Well, watching King of the Monsters and Godzilla vs. Kong and Godzilla X Kong is a travesty, and watching Pacific Rim is exciting, but the films definitely are exciting, so I'd argue that fun is subjective. Discovery of the century, I know, and I rarely tell people how I feel about things, so this is the first time I'll be giving my opinion on something. Savor it because it won't happen again. This is more of an objective analysis of my own emotional response, but I thought it necessary for the argument. The quality of a movie or show only affects how much fun I have with it if I am hoping it to be good. Recently I watched Damsel and I wanted it to be good because I like Millie Bobby Brown and I like dragons. Unfortunately it was miserably bad, and what a shame too because the effects of the dragon breathing fire are pretty cool. Instead of watching Damsel, watch Damsel, a movie starring Robert Pattinson. It's a bizarre movie with a simple plot about a man rescuing the woman that he loves from a kidnapper. Trust me, it's crazier than it may seem. One thing to consider, however, is that fun is not a tone, it's what you experience from a movie. However, it's difficult to not use that word when describing a movie like The Last Wish or Across the Spider-Verse. That movie was probably among the most serious of the movies so far, and yet I've never seen anybody call it boring. And given the subject matter, this movie is probably the darker one of any Spider-Man movie to come out in recent history, and I have a feeling Beyond the Spider-Verse will be darker in tone. But I guarantee you, nobody will call it boring because of it. The action is what makes it exciting, and this applies to any movie. When executed properly, any form of action will be exciting and is, or rather has the potential to be fun. But action isn't the only thing that can be considered exciting. How characters evolve in their relationships or whether people achieve their goals or not can be exciting too. Rocky, The Shawshank Redemption, Seven, 12 Angry Men, Rope, Rear Window. If written properly, people talking can be exciting. Look at courtrooms. People talking about events they weren't even present for is enough to dictate someone's fate. There is a reason why court dramas, comedies, romance stories, and historical movies exist, and this is one of them. Hell, there's an entire video game franchise dedicated to people talking and nobody calls it boring. Ace Attorney is one of the most successful franchises of all time. So what I think people should really consider is what they mean when they say Godzilla is versatile, because I believe so too, just not in the way people picture it. I recognize that what Godzilla already means can be expanded on with different interpretations and brand new iterations of the same concept. But if you think that can't be done because then the movies would get boring, that means you probably can't come up with new and imaginative ways to expand on what Godzilla already means, which shows a lack of imagination on your part and a lack of faith on the writer's ability to be imaginative. Not that it's entirely wrong to not have any faith, look at the movies we've been given. Godzilla x Kong isn't a bad movie because it has a lighter tone and more monster action. It's bad because the plot is held together with a single-ply toilet paper, a dust ball, shredded carrot, and a beetle's dung. But amongst the most glaring issues is the underlying issue that Godzilla doesn't mean anything concrete anymore. When you lack a defined identity, what even are you? When over time you dilute yourself just to have what you know you can't logically have out of some thanatotic desire, what do you end up becoming? You become nothing. Also, don't watch The New Empire, watch Dune 2 instead.